morning and welcome to Resolutions for Recovery. This show is dedicated to the disease of substance use disorder. And tonight my special guest is again John Haley from Seafield, and we're going to continue the conversation regarding the Blue Point property with the St. Ursulines Convent. And Seafield wants to take it over to create a facility for 76 beds for women only. And the community is up in arms, and this is unacceptable in today's world. Substance use disorder is the number one, I would say, news story that is included in every newscast that you can watch 24/7. We are losing a host, too many people. On Long Island, we're losing 3 people every 2 days in Suffolk County, with Brookhaven Township being the number 1 township for overdose. So what's wrong with this picture? So, John, the days of having to fail at outpatient, it's your moral, your moral failing.
Yeah.
Yes, my 18-year-old son, and dying at 21, and to read comments that said, good, he's dead. I don't even understand what moral compass any person has that would say, oh, good, he's dead. A 21-year-old stricken with a disease is beyond my level of comprehension, but it just goes to show the ignorance in the world today, and that's truly what it is. Ignorance. I would say people are frightened of substance use disorder because they don't understand it. So how do we change, or how do we educate the people of Blue Point to see, what would a benefit be to their community?
Well, yeah. Thanks again for having me, Linda.
Yes,
First
yes,
of all,
no.
always a pleasure to see you.
Yes.
But that being said, it's 2018, and we're still having this same discussion. We're still fighting this same fight. I think the last time I was here, we talked a little bit about how Seafield in West Hampton Beach went through this same type of community opposition when we were trying to open up our initial facility there in West Hampton Beach. So the community was very concerned about the quality of life. They were concerned about the children. They were concerned about the neighbors and the house values and what having a treatment center next door would mean.
And West Hampton Beach is a hamlet which probably has a median household income of probably $400,000, I'm going to guess, and a house value of upwards of $1 million.
It could be considered an affluent community. The Hamptons on Long Island. We're in the estate section, so we're not just in West Hampton. We're in the estate section of West Hampton, south of Main Street. So that being said, it was a significant investment for us because the property was an expensive piece of property. All of the properties around us are expensive piece of property. So I'm not naive, and I don't. It's not that I don't understand the concerns of those neighbors saying, well, what about my property values? A house is the most significant investment most people make for their entire life. So when you tell them I'm putting a rehab next to your house, their concern is certainly legitimate. So that part of it doesn't bother me, that I need to explain to them and show them examples of historically what the truth is, because there's so much bad information out there about what these rehabs are, who these people are, what the volume of people coming and going, what the interaction with the neighborhood is, the crime rates that go up around these treatment centers. All this bad information is out there and has been perpetuated for years. So I understand that people have questions. I understand that they want answers. And I even feel my obligation to answer those questions. What I don't get is the histrionics, the hatred, the prejudice, the attacking. If you have questions and concerns, you're a normal parent. You should have those questions and concerns answered. We had to answer those questions in West Hampton Beach. And for a number of years, there was great concern. So we open up in West Hampton, and they require us to have a board that is members of the community that will meet with Seafield's management on a monthly basis so that we can address those concerns as they
Okay.
come up.
Which is great. It's very proactive management.
And I thought it was very insightful for the community to say, listen, we want to be having an open communication with you about what we're seeing in terms of the impact you're having once you open your doors. Because we want to know that information.
Absolutely.
So we had that in place for maybe 2 years. We met every month the first year. We met every other month the second year. There was never any problem that needed to be addressed. That's not true. They were concerned about the deliveries coming early in the morning when people were still sleeping.
Okay.
And so we had a beeping truck backing up, which we addressed. And once we handled that issue, there really were no other issues. So, again, for me to say that, it's easy for me to say that, but what I always say is the proof is in the pudding. If I
Without a
wasn't
doubt.
a community resource that was well-respected, well thought of, and an asset, then the community in West Hampton Beach would have said to me when I went to them after we had our 60 beds and opened up in 1985, and I went back to them and said, listen, I need to expand. I want to put 20 more beds in. I'm going to expand by 30%. I went from 60 to 20 beds. And they said, no problem. And unopposed, after I was there for 10 years, no problems, paying taxes, employing people in the village. My 100-odd employees go to the deli, they go to the 7-Eleven, they go to the local restaurants. We have lunches with people who are referral sources that come out to see the place at the local restaurants and do business with all those local businesses. We generate roughly, at Seafield alone, in the local community, about $10 million a year. So now,
That's nothing to sneeze at
When
in
I
a
walk
time
into-
when taxes are being cut, when funding for everything is being cut.
when I walk in now, being in West Hampton for 30 years myself personally, working in the community, I walk into the 7-Eleven, I walk into the Bun and Burger, which is the local burger joint for lunch, and those people, John, we see on TV what's going on in Blue Point. Why do they think that? Why don't you bring them out to West Hampton and let them see what you do so that they'll know it's not what they're thinking it's going to be? Can I write you a letter? We'll be happy to write you a letter supporting you, letting everybody know what a good
Yeah.
community asset you've been. So, that's flattering to hear locally.
Absolutely.
And so I go from hearing locally that we're this asset and we're well respected and people want to do anything they can to help us to I'm the devil in Blue Point.
Yes.
They're burning me in effigy. I don't care about people. I only care about money. I run this for-profit. I take advantage of all these people that need services. All these horrible, horrible things to attack somebody's character after they've been involved in helping people for 30 years of their career. So, that's where I find myself today. But I think
That's despicable. That's just, how many people have taken you up on your offer to come out to West Hampton Beach and see the truth?
Zero. Well, I shouldn't say zero because Neil Foley, before all this blew up, we invited Neil
And
to
he's
come
the
out.
local-
He's the local councilman. So back in January, before we signed anything with the nuns, back in July of 2017, before we signed anything with the sisters and settled on the piece of property, we invited him to come out to West Hampton, which he did, and saw Seafield and knew who we were. We had interacted on a number of other scheduled events where we were speaking or interacting with regard to substance abuse and what's been going on with the opioid crisis on Long Island. So he knew who we were, and he came out and sat down with us, saw the facility, and said, I am behind the library right now. That's what I'm supporting and endorsing. If the library doesn't work out, then I will support your project in Blue Point. So he saw what we do, he knows who we are, he knows our reputation around the island, and would agree that we would go there until all of the local community was up in arms and we're putting children in danger and all the stereotypical
Yeah.
stigmatized ideas that come out, at which point he said, oh no, that's not the right place for it and it should go somewhere else, which, that's not what he said when he met with us. But then he certainly changed his tune when he got heat from the local community and said, well, we should be in an industrial area, which
How is that conducive to healing?
Well, I mean, again, I'm doing this for 30 years.
Right.
So who's going to tell me where I should place the facility,
Correct.
how big the facility should be, what the colors of the wall should be? There's all kinds of studies that
Everything.
deal with therapeutic environments.
Right down to
that
the last detail, the color of the pillows on the
pillows,
couches.
how comfortable the bedspread should be, the seating, the chairs that they sit in group in. There's a study on everything
Yes.
that has to do with a therapeutic environment. So for somebody who's been doing it for 30 years and designing facilities and buying chairs and carpeting and wall paint, to have to listen to somebody who's never done it in their life
Who is,
tell me,
by the way,
where
a
it should be.
pharmaceutical representative in his.
be that as
Freer.
it may, I certainly feel comfortable saying that I probably have a little more expertise in what the appropriate environment for a treatment center
Absolutely.
is, more so than possibly the local councilman. And that being said, we did go to a industrial park first. That's where we first approached the town of Brookhaven and said, we want to go to 58 Sawgrass, which is an industrial zoned place,
Okay.
to which the town said it's not zoned properly for it. Then we went to a second industrial zone place and said, would you work with us on this location? To which the town said, it's not zoned for it. So now that we find a third option within the town, 2 in an industrial area and 1 religious retreat, now again they're telling us, no, that's not zoned for it. So this town, who just recently sponsored the Oasis film, Reversing the Stigma, which is a fantastic documentary, by the way.
Yes.
They're sponsoring that for the townspeople to watch, and yet in 3 different locations they've told us no. And then when we came up with the third location, now everybody's telling us, including the town board people, we should be in an industrial zone and they would work with us. Well, you already told us no twice, and now you're changing your tune. If it was okay now, how come it wasn't okay the first time around? And you can't hold town hall meetings, press conferences on the stairs at town hall, reversing the stigma shows, and then say 3 different times to a provider who's coming into your town to provide services when you have more people dying in Brookhaven than anywhere else in the state, and say no, no, and guess what? No. It's
Yeah.
just terrible.
It's, it's ridiculous is what it is. So I mean, and full disclosure, Ed Romaine was invited to come tonight and unfortunately had an emergency. So I look forward to listening to him give his side of the story. However, I can see what their side of the story is. He can have parents who have lost children and embrace them all for a photo op, but where's the teeth when it comes to anything? You need to stand for something. So if you're not going to embrace a solution and a series of solutions and educate your community, then what are you doing in public office? I guess what everybody else is doing in public office, speaking out both sides of your mouth.
Well, and my position on this is the door isn't shut. We certainly
Correct.
have our plan, and our plan is moving forward regardless of the fact that it may seem like things are all quiet on the Western Front, but our plan is moving forward. We're having ongoing negotiations about how this can come to fruition, and it's not too late for the town board to wind up on the right side of history, which really is what we're talking about here, because this is an epidemic. It's a nationwide epidemic.
Yes.
They're at ground zero. They have an opportunity to effectuate change, and
In
it's
their
not too
community.
late in their community. I mean, there's, how many people have died in Blue Point? How many people that went to that high school
Too
are no
many.
longer with us?
Correct.
1's too many, 2's absurd, 3, and you still don't even want treatment services there. So it's not too late, and those conversations are going to keep moving forward, although many people are assured that it's dead in the water. That's not the case, and we do have a plan, and we are moving forward with that plan. So, hopefully the last page hasn't been written on that.
Well, the last page certainly hasn't been written because we haven't even begun to fight, and there's a whole other movement other than say no to treatment that's going to, we have to educate the public, which, we try to do with this show. We try to do at every juncture. And you can come out, and I've spoken in Blue Point with Kim Lauby from West Hampton Beach on prevention, ironically enough. So I know very close to their school district also is a liquor store.
Right across the street. There's a liquor store and a bar, but no rehab. So, I'm sure that nobody ever drove to or from that liquor store that was ever impaired in the history of that liquor store across from that school, but don't have a treatment center, for sure.
It's like I said, it's just ridiculous.
Mind-boggling.
It is. So the shame and stigma keeps people from really speaking their mind, because I'm going to venture out and probably say 25% of the people that are saying just say no have substance use disorder in their family.
Well, I always say 100%.
Yeah.
And I have yet to have anybody say that their life has not been adversely affected by somebody else's drinking. So substance abuse, whether the addict is you or your family member or your spouse's husband, your brother-in-law, sister-in-law, daughter-in-law, son-in-law, whatever extended family you have, or some drunk driver killed somebody that you love, because that happens all the time. And the only answer is treatment. That's the only answer, because you can lock them up for a little while in jail, and they're going to get out. Yeah. And they're going to use again, and they're going to drink again. Jail is not an answer.
Listen, if you've killed somebody in a vehicular manslaughter, it may be appropriate for you to go to jail, but it's also appropriate for you to have treatment in jail so that you can come out and be a productive member of society. But way too many people have substance use left untreated. So we talk about heroin and opiates all the time. I got news for you. I know my son, if I told him don't touch that pen because you can get high from touching that pen, he would have touched that pen all day long. The substance is unimportant. So whether it's alcohol, whether it's crystal meth, whether it's cocaine, whatever it is, there's going to be the next epidemic. It's a disease.
And that's why, there's all the different phases that we have to utilize to fight this battle.
Yeah.
So interdiction, law enforcement, treatment, prevention, education, every one of those facets
all the stops have to
and
come
Suffolk
out.
County has a tremendous drug court
Yes.
that does a lot of work with a number of different providers, us being one of the many. Southampton Town has a tremendous drug court, Judge Cooperman out there. And those courts have done so much to get people well, because just saying the understanding is you can't just lock somebody up for 6 months for some offense that they've committed, and then they come out and they're not going to recommit that offense as soon as they go to get their drugs again.
Absolutely.
So the drug courts are a tremendous asset, and I'm sure our local DA, who's very
Tim
savvy,
Sinney,
he's been tremendous working with both providers, treatment professionals, education people. So he's a guy who's on the ball and understands what it is that this fight that we're all fighting together is all about. And I'm not going to speak for him, but almost everybody understands that we're in this all together. We need every single asset to bring to bear on this fight that we're fighting, and to say no to something that is so clearly needed because you don't want to live next to it when you don't even understand what it is just horrible. So we invited those people from Blue Point to come out. Come to Seafield, we'll send a bus for you, we'll bring you out, tour the facility, show you the grounds, let you see who it is that we're working with.
I'm sure you'll give them lunch.
They said, we respectfully decline your invitation. So they weren't even interested in coming out and seeing if they were right or if they were wrong or if they were whatever. They didn't even want to have the information, which to me, that's just saying this is based on nothing but prejudice.
Correct. Information is power. So if I don't feel comfortable with something, I'm going to investigate it.
Yeah.
And you can't go online and read everything on the internet. So Geez, it's all of a probably 40-minute ride to get to Seafield in West Hampton Beach. Go and see what the facility looks like, the security looks like, because nobody is allowed to leave the premises. And if they do, there's consequences for them leaving the premises.
Sure. I mean, it's not a revolving door. It's not people
Correct.
coming and going all day. It's not an outpatient facility even. It's a residential treatment center. And the average person is coming there, staying at West Hampton for 19 days roughly. So they're coming in there, they're spending about 3 weeks at the facility before they leave. So the turnover, it's not like every day there's all these people coming and going
No.
from the facility, which I think is part of what the concern is with the traffic and what will be generated by having a rehab in the community, which anybody, I don't even think the staunchest opponent to Seafield going there would argue that a library would have less traffic on a daily basis and after hours and on weekends than would a treatment center for 76 women. So I don't even think that's a conversation that they're putting forth,
Right.
although somebody has said, well, we're worried about the traffic. Well, if you're worried about the traffic, then I guess you're going to say no to the library too.
Absolutely. So, maybe there should just be a bike path there. But, when we talk about this epidemic and grandparents raising grandchildren and the number of children that are orphaned from this disease because both parents are now dead and or incapacitated to care for these kids.
Or in jail.
Or in jail.
They're in the foster system
So
because the parents are wind up being arrested.
we haven't even begun to skim the surface of the cost to society for that, the economic cost, because all these babies being born dependent on opiates or heroin or whatever the case may be, they have substantial health ailments that we don't know, developmental, and the cost that's going to fall every single taxpayer. So wouldn't it be nice to empower 76 women to be a better mom, sister, daughter, friend, aunt? Why would you say no to that?
Yeah, and it's not 76 women, because I think I told you last time, that was one of the emails I got.
Oh.
How are the needs of 76 women more important than an entire community? To which I said, well, that's a ridiculous question, because it's not, and it actually will benefit your community,
Yes.
because that community, as I said the last time, over 1,000 people from Neil Foley's district that are his constituents that vote for him have come to Seafield since January 1st of 2015. Over 1,000 people that vote in his district have accessed Seafield services for treatment. So it's going to benefit you because we're going to be able to give those people treatment in your area. We're going to have the turnover of every 3 weeks roughly of 76 people. So those 76 women, it's like at Seafield, we've treated over 50,000 people now. Not 76 women, it's tens of thousands of women that are going to benefit
and their families
forever.
Forever. When a family gets well, right?
Because usually
Everybody
one person
wins.
doesn't just get well. Because
Correct.
as you know, Linda, when somebody's an addict in the family and they're doing their things to get their drugs, to lie, to steal, to hide, to
Manipulate.
it doesn't affect that one person. It affects everybody in the house. So you, your other son, you have to lock
Everybody.
your door, put your valuables away so that they're not stealing them to pawn. Everybody's affected in the family. It's not one person. It's 6 people for every single addict that gets treatment that
Correct.
then now their life is made better as well. And we get to reach out through the family program to let the parents know you need help for yourself as well. And there's Al-Anon out there. There's a whole bunch of services that are
And
available
your
to
other
the family
children, the
members.
siblings.
They need help too. And they need
help.
to understand, and they need to know why you didn't give them any attention because you're giving so much attention to my brother. And, it's just a whole family dynamic, which is why, one of the things we say at Seafield is where we treat addiction as a family disease. It
Yes.
is the whole family. It's not one person.
Absolutely. And you're familiar with that. I mean,
Well, I grew up in a household where my father was an addict and he drank and he was an alcoholic until my mother couldn't take it anymore and threw him out of the house. So he wound up moving back up to Boston where his side of the family lives. And so, yeah, we were without a father after I was 13 when he left. So,
Yeah, that's significant right there. John, we're going to be right back after this message.
My age is 18 years old and my name is Evan.
My name is Sean and I'm 19 years old.
My name is Justin, I'm 16.
My name is Angelica. I'm 18 years old.
Marijuana, and I was 13 years old.
Marijuana, and my age was 13.
The first drug I ever tried was marijuana, and I was 12 years old.
It was marijuana and I was 11 years old.
Yes, and that escalated to promethazine, lean.
I began to take pills like Xanax, Percocets.
I began using other substances such as pills and alcohol.
I then went on to cocaine and pills and quickly progressed to heroin. I was 13 years old when I first started using heroin. I had like aspirations of going to like an Ivy League school, and that quickly, within like a year or two, changed. I stopped going to my classes. I stopped going to school altogether eventually. All my friends were kind of just dropping me.
I started getting in trouble in school, eventually kicked out. I got in trouble with the law a lot.
I wasn't really hanging out with a lot of sober people, just people that use. I overdosed at 15. I've been at Outreach for 5 months. Outreach honestly really helps you. It shows that you're honestly worth something. And it's possible to become sober if you put in progress. But it's not just gonna be handed to you, you really have to want to change. Inpatient, you can't just leave. You stay here and you have to deal with it. That's what I feel like a lot of kids need.
In a long-term facility, the counselors get to know the resident better, and they get to actually work with them more than in a short-term 28-day facility. And it really gives kids a chance to work on themselves rather than being rushed through a program, just to be thrown back into life, going back into the same old bad habits that they were doing before.
Coming in here, I couldn't believe how long I would have to be here, but after a couple months, like, you know, talking to counselors, I kind of came to the realization that, like, I need a lot of time and work to repair everything I've done.
The things that we get taught here, you know, it really does help you in life, and it gives you a different perspective. It's very important for a kid to have a family involvement in treatment so they don't think they're alone in this. We communicate on a better basis than how we used to. We understand each other more, and that was from the help of Outreach.
They come every Wednesday night for support group. They come to a group every other week.
They come to peer support group to discuss their problems also. My relationship honestly has got a lot better, because I remember my mom used to never want to say anything to me because she would be scared of my reaction. I'm starting to realize in here, like, I really have to take advantage of the fact that I have her still.
When I was about 14 is when my parents realized that I had several different problems, such as behavioral issues, and the behavioral issues kind of stemmed from my drug use. I began caring less about myself and others. Outreach has really made me realize how important family is. If I was out of state in a program where my parents were not involved, I would have never been able to strengthen my relationship with them. My father told me that I've inspired him to make changes in his life, and that meant a lot to me. I've never heard my dad be inspired by something before, and I was just proud that it was me.
Welcome back to Resolutions for Recovery. And so, John, you know, you've been kind enough to share, you know, you grew up in an alcoholic house. Your dad left, you were 13 years old. You know, how many people are affected that way with not having a mom or a dad at home? You know, we always talk about young people fighting this disease because, unfortunately, that's the typical heroin opiate patient today. But in my community in Kings Park, last year, a junior and a freshman in high school found their parents overdosed. One, that their dad died, and their mom, I don't even know what the outcome was. You know, we don't even know what everyone fights every single day with this insidious disease. And that's just what it is, because it keeps everyone shameful, keeps them silent, keeps them, you know, don't talk about this outside of this house. It's nobody's business. It's everybody's business, because it's going to take communities to come together. You know, there is strength in numbers. There is, going back to the day, you have a young son. You know, when I rode my bike, everyone in the neighborhood, if I was somewhere where I wasn't supposed to be, you know, Mrs. Smith down the block would yell at me, call my mother, and send me home. You know, we need to go back to that community feeling, that community parenting, that community involvement in all our lives. Doesn't mean that they can tell you what to do, but you know what I'm saying. I mean,
Well, I mean, that's the irony of
Yeah.
the situation right now, is that they're saying in Blue Point, we have this wonderful community.
right.
We don't want you coming in and ruining this wonderful community that
When
we
a
have.
23-year-old girl was found dead on the side of the road not a month ago.
And she's not the only one. And,
Right.
and that's the people who died. So, you know, there was a young man that died right around the corner from St. Ursula's a couple of years ago at a party there. So that guy was not partying by himself.
Right.
So the fact that the other people he was partying with didn't die, we know about one person.
Correct.
How many people were there? There was 5, 10 people there partying with him that
Yeah.
live in that community.
Correct.
So that community has a problem that, because it's under the rug, under the radar, they can ignore, but that doesn't mean that they should ignore. It's there. They need help. Their children need help. You're going there speaking at the school for a reason.
Yeah.
Kim Laube is going all over Long Island, speaking at schools, doing her presentations for Hugs for a reason. And that's because no matter where you are on Long Island, including Blue Point, there's a problem with drugs, and it's getting worse. And with fentanyl now, even
Yeah.
if it's the marijuana, I mean, we've talked about this, you and I, even if it's the marijuana now, when the police are testing the marijuana, there's fentanyl on the marijuana.
Yeah.
So even the people who think, well, I'm just smoking
I'm just smoking
marijuana and it's
pot,
legal
right.
in Colorado, no big deal. Now that that's laced with, because the drug dealers who are handling the opioids, who are cutting it with fentanyl and then are bagging up their marijuana, that handling that fentanyl, putting it on the marijuana is
contamination.
going to
Yeah,
wind
happen.
up killing
Absolutely.
a child who's smoking marijuana
Correct.
on Long Island all too soon.
Thomas's Hope actually bought, we worked with Family Children's Association and LICAT, Long Island Council, and we bought the test kits for harm reduction, because you need to know what's in your batch, right?
Yep.
That's not going to stop them from using, but we certainly need to be proactive and not cause another death. And hopefully, maybe if one person out of 10 says, what am I doing? I could end up dead, and seeks treatment, then we're on the right path. But it's all about healthy, you know, empowering our little ones with healthy coping skills, the ability to communicate, the ability to make decisions that are in their best interest, and meeting them where they are. You know, just saying no is never going to work.
Didn't work.
It's
Didn't
not-
work. It's
it's
proven
not
it didn't work.
realistic.
And we have to
Right.
give them something to say yes to,
Yes.
and we have to provide that education. And that education isn't just for our young people.
It's for
It's for
everyone.
their parents who are struggling, trying to be good parents, want to do the right thing. I don't have the answers. What are the answers? And they're screaming out for help. And all over Long Island, they're looking for this. We have an opportunity to provide that for somebody, and that there's any resistance to that in light of an epidemic is just unforgivable. I mean, we can't let no to treatment be the answer. For a community to put 200 signs on their lawns say no to Seafield, and bond around denying help to
Sick and
fellow
suffering, yes.
members of their community is unconscionable to me. I can't even imagine that they can get together and say, this is what we need to do. This is
Yeah.
a great idea. Let's all buy signs and put them in our yards and show that we are going to perpetuate a stigma that everybody knows is wrong. And, you know,
And we've come a long way with the stigma. We really, truly have come a long way.
obviously not as far as we
Not as
thought
far
we had.
as, right, but
as
you know.
we need to go. I think that this can be a case study in how to move that bar forward
Yes.
with regard to the stigma, because this is a community in complete and total denial about the problems that they have there, and that they don't want to have a solution come into their community that's going to help everybody else as well. Well, we're not going to be the place that's willing to help everybody else. You have the problem.
Yeah.
It's not everybody else. You're helping yourself and everybody else. But no, we
Absolutely.
won't be that place. You know, and I think I used the analogy with you earlier of the wagon wheel.
Yes,
We're not inventing the wheel. The wheel already exists.
yes.
So we're not going to Blue Point and say, hey, let's try out the wheel. For them to say, well, we don't know anything about this wheel. The wheel exists. It's been in West Hampton for over 30 years. There are decades of facts around what this entity is, how it
beds in
operates.
Seafield?
There's 100 currently.
Okay.
Started out with 60, went to 100 in 3 different phases. But that wheel exists, and with the wheel existing for over 30 years, no child has been hurt. Nobody has complained once about the
kidnappings?
traffic. Nobody's been kidnapped. No neighbor's car has gotten broken into. All of these things
You
that
know,
are these
the very
stereotypical things.
Things that they're complaining about are committed by people who are not seeking treatment for substance use.
that are active, that are
Yes,
out there in the
they're
streets active. They're
active.
not
You know,
leaving a
well,
treatment center, walking
correct.
out the front door and breaking into the neighbor's house or car, which is what's being
Yes.
alleged. But for 30 odd years, that just never happened. But it's going to happen the first day in Blue Point. I mean, it's unrealistic.
It's so unrealistic. And it's, again, all our small robberies that are going on for $400. Those are drug-seeking people needing to get their next fix. And maybe what people don't understand is, and you've heard me say it before, I had my son Thomas, I miss him every second of every second. My son Thomas, actively high, actively seeking drugs. I don't miss him any second of any one day, because they were two distinct, different people. When a person is left as the host for the disease of substance use, with heroin being its boss, you're going to do anything and everything to get your next fix. It doesn't matter. They'll stop at nothing. But somebody who's seeking treatment, seeking recovery in recovery, that's a person that's going to offer service to the community. That's a person who's just trying to do the right thing for the hour that they're in. You know, we have Thrive, the community center over here. People are getting well. People are getting well. There's a whole host of celebrities. But when a celebrity comes forward and says, oh, I went to rehab, it's, you know, they're celebrated. Really? So the little boy that lives next door, or the one that, you know, the girl that lives across the street, they don't, you know, they deserve the same recognition for
Well,
seeking treatment.
There's plenty of proof that treatment works. all right?
Absolutely.
The actuaries at the insurance companies,
Mm-hmm.
the big business people, IBM, have done all these studies to say, if I put $1 into treatment, do I get a return on my investment? Because for those big companies, it's all about dollars. And they found out for every $1 they put into treatment, they got $27 back. So that is because treatment works. So I have to go into my Christmas party at Seafield that we throw for our employees and stand up in front of everybody and say, we're fighting the fight in Blue Point so that we can help more people. But they say they don't want those people in their neighborhood. Now, the people that are sitting in my audience who are my employees, I have 159 employees that live, their homes where they pay taxes are in the town of Brookhaven. So 159 of my employees that I have to sit in front of and say they don't want those people in their town of Brookhaven, in Blue Point specifically, that's you. Because a lot of my employees that have been with me for 10, 20, and 30 years are recovering people.
Yes.
They've gone to treatment. They are giving back through their commitment to helping
Absolutely.
another alcoholic, drug addict. They're recovering. They went to treatment. They're doing well. They've got jobs. They've got houses. They've got cars. They pay insurance. They pay their taxes. And they live, 159 of them, in the town of Brookhaven. So, I have to look at their faces when I'm telling them they don't want those people in their town. So, that backlash hasn't started yet. That has been the silent minority,
Yes.
silent majority of people who are getting ready for their pushback
Yes.
against this type of stigmatism. So, I know Jeff Reynolds was on the
Yes.
show, and he went to talk to Neil Foley about
he
it.
did.
And, Jeff, after he was on, the comments, and he wrote a very nice piece in the newspaper,
Yes.
an editorial. And the comments on Newsday's webpage after that were, he's on Seafield's payroll. They're attacking a man who has dedicated his life to helping other people
Yes.
and gives of his time, as you know,
Unbelievably,
all the
he's-
time.
yes.
Brookhaven Town called him and asked him for free, come and do a video with Steve Chasman from Long Island Council.
Yes.
Come do a video for us to educate people about this opioid addiction, which he did.
Which he did.
And then he's got to go and talk to the town councilman about why won't you allow treatment in your town. So, there's a whole bunch of people out there who are getting the message, getting together, rallying, and we cannot let it stand that some community, any community, gets to say,
Yes.
we don't want those people in our community, because then
Those
you go
people
somewhere else
are
and the
your
next people.
people. They're the same people. Unfortunately, or fortunately, now people are coming out of the church basement. 12-step fellowship often met in secret because of the fallout and the judgment and the discrimination against them because they suffered from a brain disorder. They should go and look up the medical term and see the diagnostic code for substance use disorder. It is not a moral failing. It is not any of those things. Not everyone gets afflicted with it, because then we'd really be screwed.
Yeah, and that's what all of the emails that we were getting
Yeah.
and all the comments on our page on Facebook are all, those people, these drug addicts, these criminals, these women who are prostituting themselves, these, it's not a disease, they're hiding behind that. So I guess the American Medical Association, who are professionals who have studied this
Yeah.
for decades and decades and designated it a disease with all of the
Findings.
explanations and
Yes.
findings around that, with treatment protocols, best practices, ways to help these individuals that suffer from this disease. But if it was cancer, you can have that disease,
Yes.
and we'll throw you a party. We'll paint everything pink for the month.
Yes.
And I'm saying that having lost a close personal friend to breast cancer. And that's okay. We can get behind that. But if you're an addict, that stigma, you have a disease just like anybody who's got cancer. But the stigma around that is just that you're this awful, horrible criminal who's crazy and doesn't care about anybody else but yourself, and you're going to harm our community. Well, even if that was the case, we really need to get them treatment then.
Absolutely.
Even if that's what you believe and it's wrong, why don't you want to get those people into treatment and off of drugs?
Absolutely. It's just always mind-boggling to me because I've earned the right to say to people, so I'm a horrible person, I'm a horrible parent, Do I look like, I'm the dredge of the earth? Do I look like I didn't provide a home life for my son? No. With a drag of a cigarette, a drag of a joint, or a sip of a beer, substance use disorder was ignited in my 16-year-old brain. Period. End of conversation. Why him? Why not my other 2 children? I will never know that reason. That was his makeup.
That's part of why treatment is so important. Because we have Dr. Delman, who's our medical director, who you're familiar with, and who's a wonderful man and knowledgeable and can impart that information, and Dr. Dewey, who works with us.
Oh, he's amazing.
Who has done numerous studies on the brain chemistry, the impact. He's got the scans of the brains and how they're affected, and the length of time it takes to heal the brain that's been damaged, the impact that it has on the brain. And that information, to be able to sit in a room, when you think, I've just been a bad person, my parents hate me, my wife won't talk to me anymore, I feel like crap, I want to kill myself. Depression is a big part of this disease. And then somebody walks into a room and puts up on a big screen in front of you, these are the brains of people, this is how they've been affected, these people were affected because they have an addiction, these people were not affected the same way through no fault of their own. The people who had these problems and don't have these problems, they're both good people.
Right.
One of them's not bad, and one of them's not good. One of them, their brain is constructed in such a way that the chemistry in their brain is affected by drugs and alcohol in a way that sets them off on this craving that they cannot themselves stop. This other person had a drink and then went home, went to bed.
Right.
They're not a good person. They might actually be the bad person. This person might be the good person. That has nothing to do with being good or bad. It's got to do with brain chemistry. And for people to be able to see that and understand it, and part of treatment is giving them that education along with the tools to deal with that in the future.
It's a relief when you find out. You mean, I am not really capable of stopping? Because you really are not capable of stopping without the proper treatment and the proper time away and learning all the tools that you need to learn to achieve recovery. That's, you can't do that by yourself. And I shouldn't say that because there are people, I'm sure, that have done it on their own. But that's not truly the case, usually.
Well, there's more than one study out there.
Yeah.
I mean, this has been studied for decades and decades. And the self-help programs, the education through treatment centers, there's 2 hats that a lot of our counselors talk about wearing, because a lot of our counselors are in recovery. But they also have gone on to get their education with their LCMSW, their KSAC. So they wear that professional hat, but they also wear the self-help hat. And afterwards, they're going home for their own self-help and their own well-being. So there are those 2 hats that people wear, and having an understanding that both of those things, both of the trained clinicians and the people in the rooms, both play a major part in somebody's long-term recovery.
Absolutely.
And having one without the other, you're never going to find a treatment professional that says to you, just come to me. You don't need any of that.
Yeah.
And if you do, I would ask a whole bunch of questions, because there are things out there where you're reading and you're seeing at 2 o'clock in the morning on television, we've got the cure.
Yeah.
Come to us, we have the
Right.
cure. So, both of those hats are very important, and self-help is, if we get somebody to agree while we're treating them that they will go to self-help and continue in self-help when they're done with us, we've done a tremendous service for them.
Absolutely, but just for somebody sitting in Blue Point right now, if you've got 40 pounds to lose, 25 pounds to lose, how difficult is it to give up the things that you love to eat, to drink, that cause your body to gain weight? Well, if it was so easy to give up something that that gives you pleasure while you're ingesting it, then you wouldn't be 40 pounds overweight, would you? It's the same. There's food addictions, there's gambling, there's alcohol. Alcohol may be legal, but that doesn't make it good for everyone doing it. You know, at Christmas time, we took my grandson to see the firemen's parade right in my neighborhood. There had to be 200 people at this one stop. It was about 8:30 at night. People coming out with a six-pack of beer. Every adult there, or 95% of them, came out with an alcoholic beverage. And it absolutely blew my mind, because we're talking about bringing children that believe in Santa, and you can't put your drinks down for a minute to be present in your child's life for, you know, a magical moment like that. So what does that say about society as a whole, you know?
Well, the irony again is that those people will hear you saying what you just said and say, don't judge me.
Right.
And then they'll turn around
and judge
and say, but we don't
everybody
want
else.
those people
Those
in our
people.
neighborhood.
Right. You
So-
are part of those people. You know, at Halloween, when I look out and you're dragging your little red wagon with a cooler and you're having a red cup and you are showing your children, you
Having
are
a
their
good time
biggest
means
hero.
having a drink.
Having a good time means having a drink. Mom and dad can only have a good time when they have alcohol. So you've already kick-started, you know, their brain pattern. Because kids at 10 years old, 11 years old, or 12 years old have learned from their parents.
Yep, they've already modeled, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we have a lot of work to do, because we need, as communities, to show our young people, we can tell you, go out and just have fun. Let me show you how to just go out and have fun without the use of something to alter your mind. We have to be the example. And I think that Long Island has to be the example for Blue Point, and we're all going to stand up and we're all going to say, so we're going to say yes to Seafield, and we're going to say no to a lot of politicians that are going to come up for re-election, because they're not going to get any place. That's a promise that even if I have to run, I'll run against them.
And you're moving into Blue Point.
I am moving.
I heard you were moving into Brookhaven.
I'm moving into Brookhaven, so game on, you know. But, you know, it's important to take a stand here. You know, John Flanagan, Senator Flanagan, came out and admitted that he had a problem and is seeking help. So, you know, does that make him a bad person all of a sudden? No, it just made him a person that's been struggling.
And all those people have stood with me, you know, which is some of the irony. So, you know, Neil Foley stood with me on the steps of Town Hall, and, you know, Kate Browning has stood with me in front of my sober homes to say, you know, this is a quality provider and they're doing the right thing, and we need more of the good providers out there and not what's been going on in some of the others. And, you know, Lindsay, Flanagan, I mean, all these politicians have been speaking about this epidemic and what needs to be done, and that action has to be taken.
And the governor.
And the governor has been, the governor, this has been, I'm a Republican, but this governor has been the best governor we've ever had.
He really
He's a
has.
friend to treatment.
Yes.
He's a friend to people who.
In recovery.
Absolutely. And
He understands the disease and the impact on family.
and he's forced insurance companies to pay for this
Yes.
treatment that people need when they've been denying it since I've been in the field for 30 years. So that's the kind of leadership that
That
we
we need.
need to have, so that we're not continuing to lose an entire generation of kids.
Because that's the sad fact of life. You know, you can pretend that it's not happening in your community, but that's all you're doing, is pretending that it's not happening in your community. It's happening. You know, and just because they're not in high school or they're not in school, that they're 22 or 23, does that make it any less tragic? What could they have become? You know, the insidiousness of this whole disease is mind-boggling.
Yeah. And there's still somebody's sister, somebody's brother,
Yes.
and somebody's child.
Somebody's grandchild, you know. It's devastating families. It's certainly across the whole United States. But on Long Island, we're going to say yes to treatment for Seafield, and we will make that our battle cry. Keep up the good fight, John.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks for
you
having me.
so much for joining us this evening, and please join when we need help. You're going to have to come out and be an advocate, and you're going to have to, come and stand on the side of treatment, stand on the side of the right thing to do for someone who is struggling with the disease. Have a great weekend.